it's Ashley and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips, and we are back for another vlog. Today is my second round of Thanksgiving. Normally we get all of Thanksgiving done in one weekend, but my mother-in-law was unfortunately really sick, so we had to postpone it until now, and I've been asked to make my espresso cupcakes as well as my espresso cream puffs, but I couldn't find any mascarpone at the grocery store. So I'm gonna go for just espresso whipped cream in the center. And then I'm also going to make possibly the chocolate mousse filling that I made for the pies and my last Thanksgiving video, but put it into the cream puffs. So we're gonna get started on that. And I'm also going to make some extra cupcakes so I can put some lemon curd in there and do some lemon meringue cupcakes as well. I only have a few hours until second Thanksgiving starts, so let's try to get this done. Another weekend, another vlog, and usually I start my baking after heading to the gym. Sometimes I also pick up groceries on the way. I believe on this day I didn't actually have a grocery pickup, which was great because I really needed to maximize the amount of time that I had to actually bake. I always start off with trying to get all of the baked goods out of the way, meaning all of the baked portions. So here I'm whipping up my favorite cupcake recipe. This was also the same recipe that I used on Cross Country Cake Off. Definitely go and check that out if you haven't already. It is on Crave, I believe. I'm not sure if that's just in Canada or if that's in the States too or other areas and locations, but yeah, I think I'm season 1, episode 5, I want to say, even though technically it's another series. It's not actually part of the first half of season 1. It was a little bit confusing actually when I went to go and look at the episodes, but I think it said season 1, episode 5. A lot of people have been asking me about my experience on being on a cake show, and I can't actually say too much because obviously there's a disclosure agreement. I can't give away all of the secrets. However, I can talk a little bit about how my experience actually went. One of the questions that I often get asked from viewers and from people in real life is, would you do this again? And I had a huge dream of being on TV. In my mind, being on some sort of cake competition show would really mean that I've made it in life and I'm basically a quote unquote real cake decorator and a real baker. So when I was asked to be on the show, I was absolutely thrilled. And it was interesting because during this time, I was actually invited onto a lot of different shows all at once, and I did the interview for this show while in the kitchen at a YouTube event, which to this day was one of the biggest social media events I have ever been invited to in my entire life. So the idea that I was doing this interview in the back room during this giant event was just so strange to me, but also so wonderful. But it also kind of made me forget that I even did the interview. I can't remember how much time actually elapsed, but eventually I did get invited to be on that show. And this was just before I got invited to be on a couple of other things as well. But in the media world, you can't actually be on a ton of shows of the same nature for different networks, or for the same network either. So I had to make a choice, and it was a little bit of a difficult choice because a lot of my viewership is not Canadian. So I just decided to go with my Canadian roots and went for the Canadian television show. A few of my other friends have been on caking shows before. So when I went into this experience, I was expecting to replicate their experience, I guess. I thought it would be relatively the same, but in reality, it was a lot different. For one thing, most of the shows that my baker friends have been on have been kind of a one and done. But the show that I was on, you had to go through multiple rounds. And it also wasn't a team event. So my friends got to be on different shows that actually had a full team behind them. And they got to choose who would be on their team. For the show that I was on, you're really just a cake decorator by yourself doing the whole thing by yourself. Of course, there are some advantages to this. For example, you don't have to worry about about a team member dropping out because it's really just you, and all the decisions are going to be made by yourself. Now, for someone like me, I think I do much better in team-based events. Although I can be a leader, for some reason, when I'm in a group situation, I do much better just being the person that's continually ticking off all of the tasks, and I don't necessarily want to be the delegator. So going into the competition itself, I felt very alone. Luckily, the other contestants were the nicest people ever. Now, I've heard some different things about American networks, that they're a little bit different, but the Canadian network that I was on could not have been more Canadian. When asked to speak about other competitors, it was always in the most positive way. Like, could you speak to someone that you think is really amazing on this show? And I loved it. It created an environment in which, yes, we knew that we were still in competition with people, but it really felt like we were trying to get through this whole thing together. For the most part, making the cakes and decorating them, it really was what you saw. You're basically trying to cake decorate and get it all done within, I think it was a 4-hour time limit, and they stayed very, very true to that 4-hour time limit. I have to say, I was super nervous about the way that things would be edited or the way that things would look after post-production, but this could not have been a more honest depiction of what really happened. Anything that didn't show up on the show really was just because it didn't show up on the show. There wasn't enough space and time to put every single little bit of footage in there. I know that I personally probably could have made something a little bit cleaner, a little bit neater on the show, but I was under a lot of stress, and it wasn't actually in the kitchen that was causing that kind of mental block or mental stress. Once I actually started getting going, I was okay, but it was all the stuff leading up to it. There was a lot of preparation and thought and work that goes into big shows like this, of course, but I think the biggest thing for me was just the traveling and making sure that everything was going to be all good with my full-time job at home and making sure that my kids were taken care of. Just before I left for filming, this huge mix-up happened with my son's schooling. So he was supposed to be on particular days, and I had signed him up for that months in advance, as you have to in order to get your spot. And I thought that he was on those days. So then I made sure to have childcare for the other days that I knew he would have nobody watching him or picking him up on time. And they actually made a mistake, and I was so stressed, so unhappy, and I had just a few days to figure it out before I left. I managed to figure everything out in the nick of time, but oh my goodness, I was just so stressed with so many different things, I couldn't even really think about cake. So to answer the question of whether or not I would go on another show like this, I would love to do another show that is in a group setting and probably not an elimination round show. So the show that I was on had several different rounds, and it is a different ball game when you're making lots of different cakes and you have to come up with lots of different ideas. I would love to be on something like The Big Bake on the Food Network, because that is just in a group and you get to just make one giant amazing cake and then you're done. And that was kind of the other thing about this show. Although I'm really happy with what I ended up creating, I love to create these large scale things that I would never really create at home on my own time. So again, I really want to do something like that eventually. I honestly think that if I didn't have such amazing contestants with me, and if the producers of that show weren't as great and friendly as they were and as Canadian as they were, I just don't know if I would have made it through that experience without just having some sort of breakdown. Although I haven't applied to be on any new shows as of late, it doesn't mean that I don't pretend that I'm on a cooking show or cooking competition while I'm in the kitchen like this, especially when I'm doing long baking days like this. I always just try to think that I'm under a time crunch and I'm trying to go as fast as I can. And I must say that doing this and pretending this for so long has really helped me make things more efficiently. Once these cupcakes were baked, it was just all about the fun of decorating them and filling them. Now, originally I wasn't going to go with a round tip for this because, chocolate round tip can kind of end up looking a little strange. So I decided to go really heavy with the chocolate chips. I don't know. What do you guys think? Round tip and chocolate? Does it make sense still? I don't know. I wanted to make sure to leave this part for last because obviously these are getting filled with fresh cream and they might stay out for a little bit. I want to make sure that the pastry on the outside is still as crisp as possible when people get it, so I always try to fill my cream puffs at the very last minute. The mousse ended up really, really delicious inside of these, but I must say that I still think the espresso cream puffs reign supreme. Something about just having pure whipped cream in there really brings me a lot of joy. I like it. It's a little bit lighter, but if you are a chocolate fan, I highly recommend chocolate mousse inside of cream puffs. It's super, super nice and light. I'm not a fan of custard inside of cream puffs, but again, some people like that, so you could definitely mix in some custard and whipped cream. Sometimes when you make this much variety, it can be a lot of dessert, but luckily the cream puffs and the cupcakes, except for the lemon meringue ones, freeze really, really well. So we got to enjoy them for a few more days after that. All right, managed to get it all done, and it's time for Thanksgiving dinner. So I will see you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys, and be sure to check out my brand new podcast with Alia, Cake Legend here on YouTube, The Bakedown. Bye!